Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to another video. I'm a little behind on these. I'm been very busy. Last weekend I went to Austin, Texas for the GOAT Grand Prix. I kind of want to make a video about that at some point, kind of my experience and just general talking about the event. I also have been working on some spicy decks. Hopefully I can have a video coming out soon about some really fun concepts I've been working with that have been surprisingly good. And then, like I said, I'm behind on these. These are my reviews of the War League matches because I'm in both Edison and the GOAT format War League, and I want to try to post a review of every single match. So, without further ado, let's get into it. This is my week 1 match of the War League. I'm playing against CrowdDad7. He's on Chaos Turbo, and I'm on Warriors. Enough said. I will say, I'll go ahead and, I don't know if I save this for later in the video to kind of talk about it as it's happening, but I want to talk about this now. I've reviewed this game. I've looked back at the replay once or twice, and it's one of those games that, just thinking about Yu-Gi-Oh! In general, especially, I think that I am quite an emotional duelist, and for better or for worse, that's just naturally how I am competitively. When the tides are not turning my way in a game, I get frustrated. I don't ever flame my opponent or anything, but I kind of take it inwardly and see it more of my reflection as a player, and that's never good to do. But at the same time, the reason I mentioned that was because this game specifically, I was put in a lot of really, really uncomfortable positions where I had to make really tough decisions. And every time I would come to one of those decision points, which you'll see throughout this match, I felt like I made the wrong decision. And then that kind of became like an avalanche effect. And so I start thinking, I was thinking that I had all these terrible misplays, and there definitely will be misplays in here. But sometimes you're just faced with like a 50-50, and you make your decision, and you just need to be confident in it and say, hey, you know what? That's the decision I made. I'm proud of that, and let's push forward. I didn't do a good job about that this match, and I was faced with a lot of those 50-50s, and I kept doubting myself, thinking that I'm making the wrong decision, and it kind of compiled or compacted, whatever I'm trying to say, and ended up, leading to a loss of confidence, I would say. So I just kind of want to get that out of the way from the beginning, because it definitely plays a role in this match, and I don't mean anything specifically by it. It's just an interesting observation, I guess. That's why I like doing these reviews and seeing, where we can improve. And the mental game was big here, and just knowing not to be too hard on ourselves, and we have to make tough decisions regardless. Okay, so he starts off with the nuts, essentially, minus duo pot agreed. So whatever. Plenty of time to fight back. We get dust shooted, which always sucks to get dust shooting when you're playing Warriors, because the card's very rarely live against you besides turn 1, and then we get dust shooted for the exiled again. So he knows our hand. And then here is kind of where I'm already faced with several decisions, and ultimately where I made the wrong ones. My read is that this face down is a spy, typically. Turbo will set spy first. That's just my initial read. Set spy, or sometimes if they know you're on Warriors, they'll set Sinister or Sanguine first, because they want you to waste your Exiled Force or Mystic Swordsman level 2. Something along those lines. Which shows it doesn't make sense why I go for Exiled Force here anyway. I think the correct decision is... just rip the mind control and move on with our lives, especially because he knows I have it now. But in my mind, this is like a set spy, and so I just want to deal with this as quickly as possible. I'll save the mind control for later, and that's just faulty thinking. Like, the mind control is just never going to be live. CrowdDad, he's a great duelist. He's gonna know that I have this in hand, and he's gonna play around it at every possible avenue. And he sets, probably 20 monsters throughout this game, and every time I have to have this inner war with my mind, whether this is an actual set or it's a bluff for the mind con. I'm thinking in the back of my mind, though, I can save this mind con for later to deal with like a Chaos Sorcerer or something, but honestly, it turns out it was a Dekoichi, and I just don't know what I'm accomplishing by doing this exiled force play. I think I should just rip the Minecon and just call it a day. But you know what? It's not horrible. We went 1-for-1 with the Dekoichi, so I'm not super upset about it. And you know what? When worst comes to worst, I can use the mind control on like a Chaos Sorcerer down the line or something. Okay, so I go ahead and take a little bit of a different route. Instead of setting all three, or just setting one solemn, I set the mind control and the solemn. Really just little minor things like this I like to do to kind of keep my opponent on their toes. And because with him dust shooting me, he's going to know exactly what cards I have. He knows I have he knows I have a solemn mind control. And so his read when I set both of these, that these are both solemns, and he's going to be keeping that in mind throughout the game. And so by putting a mind control here, you know, later in the game, if this solemn is used up or something comes along the line, he tries to snipe the solemn, he could potentially snipe the mind control instead. So it's just a little minor thing just to try to keep my opponent on their toes. That's my thinking, at least. So he goes ahead and sets one. I draw into Duo. I don't want to Duo yet because this could he could potentially still have Sinister in hand, and I want to get full value out of the Duo. But I really don't feel like he's going to be setting a real flip into this mind control turn 1. So I'm already faced with these 50-50 decisions. It just makes my brain hurt. Not necessarily a 50-50 in this situation, but just having to think a lot about every time he sets something. I have to figure out, is this the real thing or not, and try to make a read. And really, I should just probably tell myself, just don't use the mind control. Just never use it until you see a chaos monster or something like that, and then that would at least take some of that stress out of my mind. Okay, so he sets another, and then in my mind, he didn't flip this first one up. So I'm thinking that this first one he set is the Sinister, and the second one is potentially a real flip. So now I go ahead and do the Duo. If he sets two of these and didn't flip the first one up, that leads me to believe that this first one is probably a Sinister that's set. The only other thing it could be that he wouldn't flip up is potentially like a Night Assailant or a Sangan. So we go ahead and rip the Duo now. Hit a Tsukiyomi. Decide to go in because my read is that this first one is the Sinister and the second one is the real flip. And it turns out the second one was the Sinister. So that leads me to believe that this one that's set now is either a Sangan or a Night Assailant. Sets again and passes. Hold on one second here. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, so now he sets another one. I kind of have a decision here if I want to get aggressive and go ahead and go on with a Sasuke. I have double Solemn, but he knows I have double Solemn. In my mind, this new one is probably the Sinister again, but I would like to check. I don't want to summon the Sasuke if I'm going to be getting value out of this Blade Knight on a real flip that he finally decides to set. But then why is he going to set a real flip into this Blade Knight regardless anyway? So it doesn't make any sense. I mean, regardless, this is a very tricky situation. He opened really nicely. He's up in cards, and so I'm just kind of have my back against the wall right off the bat, faced with some very tough decisions. Now I go ahead and say, all right, he's just going to keep sitting this Sinister. If he sets the Faith here and I summon another monster and don't get value out of Blade Knight, then that's just a genius move regardless. So now he goes Torrential, and I hate, he knows that I'm going to Solemn this, I think. I'm assuming that he probably knows I'm going to have to Solemn this because my read is that he has Sinister, and at this point you have to deduce that this is more than likely a Sangan because he would have probably flipped a Night Assailant. And it could be like a Spy, potentially, that he's just been sitting on for a while, but I'm not too concerned about that because I have the Sasuke plus Prima. So, yeah, I thought about potentially letting this go through regardless and trying to save the Solemns for later because he's got Chaos alive already, and I need to save these Solemns for a Chaos monster. Like I said, I have Mind Control for it, but... So yeah, maybe I hold that there. I don't know. As you can see, I'm already in some tricky spots. And then he has Mirror Force. He has both mass removal traps for my monster. And so I'm committed now. I Solemn the Torrential. I have to Solemn the Mirror Force now. And it turns out to be a Sangan, which is a really unfortunate. He just had a really, really nice combination of cards there that made this extremely tricky for me. Then again, my decision making wasn't great and a bit inconsistent. Now he goes Tribe, which is just another piece of mass removal that I don't have an answer for. He gets the free plus because of Sinister. Drawn to Saku, you just have to set it or I die. Now I'm out of Prima range. I guess I could have, like, you could always, I thought about maybe mind controlling the Tribe and then discarding the Saku to blow it up. That just feels horrible. So, yeah, now I have to Saku. He sets one. I drawn to Pot of Greed, which is nice to draw, but I drawn to Mirror Force and Zing, which just aren't doing a ton. And I feel like at this point I need to go for some sort of desperation play, and that's why I decided to go ahead and mind control, hoping that maybe this is the time that he sets the Faith. And it was not. It was a Sinister. And we get heavy, and that's the game. Really rough. Really, really rough game one. Didn't play it well, honestly. Played quite sloppy, I think. But then again, like I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the game, I just was in a lot of those situations where I had to make a tough decision and nothing really felt good, so it made me perpetually feel like I'm making the bad decisions over and over and over again. Luckily, this hand we start out Pot of Greed, which is nice. I go ahead and set the Ring and the Dust Shoot. I don't want to set the Solemn because if I use Dust Shoot and then I see that he has like Heavy or something, I'll be kind of put in an uncomfortable situation where I would have to Heavy just to save my Ring or use my Solemn just to save my Ring, and that wouldn't feel good. So, see his hand. I thought about this for a long time. I think there's reasons that you can make for every single one of them. Ultimately, I decided to send back Spy. Yeah, I think there's kind of reasons for all of them. Now that I think about it, though, watching this back, I remember the first time I watched this replay, I think Sangan was the better decision because you can always search Spy off of Sangan regardless. Yeah, I think sending back Sangan was the play there. Not sure why I sent Spy. So up starts. And this was very frustrating. I guess I showed it already, but he drew into another Spy. So at this point, I know that his set is Widespread Ruin, and my plan is to summon Blade Knight, attack. If he doesn't let the attack go through, then if it's a Sangan, he probably lets the attack go through. And then if he doesn't let the attack go through, he uses the Ruin. I'll know it's the Faith, and then I can mind control Pot of Greed again. That's kind of my line of thinking here. And I attack in my surprise when I run into a Spy again. But it's okay. We have answers. I decided to go ahead and set the Solemn here, which I don't know if that makes total sense because I'm putting myself in the exact same situation that I mentioned earlier, but he would be losing out on a card if he decided to Heavy. But if he set the Pro Heavy, then that's, it's just nice anyway. Okay, so he sets a 1, so I know that this is either a Faith or a Sangan, more than likely, unless he drew into another monster. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get some value. Same idea. I'm going to attack into this. If it goes through, it's the Sangan. If it doesn't go through, it's the Faith, and we use Mind Control. He searches Night Assailant, and so this is telling me that he's trying to set up a juicy card destruction, which I'm already pretty much set that I'm going to use my Solemn on this card destruction. Main phase 2, I go Tribe, get these Spies out of here as quickly as possible. I think maybe I could save this until next turn anyway, but there's potential I might want to use my normal summon with this Exiled if he does something crazy, so I think that's reasonable. And obviously I ditch the Kaiku to get a Darkened Grave as quickly as possible. So any card destructions, like I said, ready to Solemn that. He sets 1, and then if this is Faith, it's just game. And it is. So I decided to go ahead and just go for it. And I just kind of had the read that it was Faith there. I was trying. This did take me a second to figure out to find lethal because there might have been other lines I could have taken here, but I need to get the Blade Knight engrave, or I need to get a Light engrave, excuse me. But ultimately I remembered that in my grave I had Rhoda, so I go ahead and Rhoda. I know that his set is Widespread Ruin because of what we saw through Dust Shoot. I grab Sasuke, ditch it off of Tribe to destroy the Faith, and then BLS Ring. that does it. All right, game 3. I definitely wanted to win this one just for some context of the war. My team was up 2-0 thanks to Giomberman and Ray Saber 7, just absolute monsters. They're so good, and they got us up 2-0 in this war, and I was the third one up, and I was really wanted to get this win for the team. Unfortunately, they go Thunder Dragon into card destruction, which is kind of brutal, and they have the Sinister as well, and they just completely saturated his graveyard with Lights and Darks, and lost the duo, so just not a great start. Nice 6-man card destruction, and he's already way ahead. But there's stuff that we can do. So I have a few options. I can always, just summon the Swordsman, attack, and then if the attack doesn't go through, then I can knock. I can always heavy than Mystic Swordsman, knowing that I have the Dust Tornado back up, and I think I end up taking the first route. I should have taken the second. Yeah, so now I knock, knowing that he's probably trying to protect something. Probably. I know there are some really good turbo players that will try to bait you into using knock on something they want you to, because they'll ring your Mystic Swordsman level 2, making you think that what they have said is important, but I'm not thinking that far into it. So I think the better play probably would have been to heavy first, just to make sure that just to keep the Mystic Swordsman level 2 on board, because I have the ring to protect it. So I think that was better. Then I set heavy, trying to get, basically my thinking here is that I'm already very far behind in advantage. Not very, but I am behind, certainly behind. After this card destruction, his grave saturated, he's got a Sinister in rotation. It's not looking good, and so I'm thinking if I can get some sort of plus going here, then a heavy might give me a chance to take a nice plus. But most of the time they're not going to set 2 into this here, but it's worth a shot. Okay, so I want to make sure that my attack is going to go through, so I go ahead and heavy here, and I go with the Blade Knight. Obviously, I could have gone Rhoda for Exiled, but I kind of have a read that this is not a Spy, because my thinking is that he would usually set Spy first in the situation, but maybe not necessarily. I don't know. I think the better play would have been to Exile, just to be perfectly honest. Yeah, at least I have the Rhoda though, knowing, I kind of had that in the back of my mind. Hey, if this is a Spy, I need to have a backup plan, and I'll have the Sasuke as a backup plan just in case things go wrong. And Phase Dust. Now I could go Sasuke if I wanted to, but at the same time, he just set a face down, and I kind of want to get value out of my Blade Knight if I can. So I thought quite a bit about this, and I ended up going ahead and trying to get some value out of the Blade Knight by attacking, and I run into a Sangan, which is just not about as bad as it gets. So then he sets one again, passes, and now I'm thinking, okay, am I just going to keep attacking into non-real face downs? Let's just go for it. It's kind of the same thing I did game 1. I made the decision after one turn of attacking into a fake monster to just go for it. Correct or not. Here he brings down Tribe, and I thought long and hard about this, but I ultimately decide not to Solemn. My reasoning being, just thinking in my head, this Kaiku will get in some value next turn. I have the ring for the Spy if necessary, and then I have the Kaiku to attack over the Tribe if necessary. So, and then that will get some value out of Kaiku, putting it on board. And I'll have the Solemn to help protect it. So I don't know. I think this is a 50-50, honestly. I think it's pretty close. I'm sure there's others that would disagree and say that this is a pretty clear Solemn. And maybe it is. Maybe I'm just coping. But I ended up not solving. Okay, I draw into Zing, and then I start thinking, you know what? I'm not going to summon Kaiku yet. I can afford to take another 1600 because I want to make sure that the Kaiku goes through, and Zing drastically increases my chances of that happening. So we take the 16. Passes, we're just really, really far behind. So I go ahead and Zing the new one and then the far left one. Now I've got the Kaiku to roll out. And the one that I left open was the Battle Trap. I'm curious what his other two were, just for curious. So more traps. I mean, he's dealing with this Kaiku regardless. And I decide that if he goes with a Chaos Monster, I'm pretty much just dead at that point. So I need to protect this Kaiku as much as possible. And that still leaves me with enough to go, to use my Prima to bring out Sasuke to potentially deal with this spy. Then he goes Graceful, gets a really nice value Graceful, but what are you going to do? I mean, he has 11 cards left in his deck at this point, so. He goes Tsukiyomi. I have to ring this. If he has a Chaos Monster to follow up, then he has a Chaos Monster to follow up. And he's got BLS, so, and Swords, and sets another monster. It's just not looking good. I think here I decide to go Exiled, pop the BLS. That's like an obvious, you just have to deal with this BLS. But at the same time, I decide to use the Prima to bring out a DD Warrior Lady instead of bringing out the second Exile to pop the Spy. I mean, if he draws another monster, I'm dead anyway, and he has Sinister, so it's just not a good situation regardless. But I go ahead and go DD Warrior Lady just to try to protect my life a little bit. He sets one. I turn the Lady defense, draw a Don Zalug, set it, and then he goes Snatch and flips a Knight Assailant. And that's it. It was a tricky game. I was not happy at all with how I played this game. I think that I put myself into too many situations that I shouldn't have. Also, hats off to Crowdad for playing really well, in my opinion. I just was forced to make a lot of really tricky decisions, and it really kind of got in my head. I didn't play my best, was not happy with this match at all, but that's Yu-Gi-Oh! Sometimes you have matches like this. Sometimes you just get the freest of wins where you just draw all your good cards and it's easy and it feels effortless to read your opponent and make the correct plays. And then there's some games that just feel like uphill battles the entire way. And this was certainly one of them. But I think there's a lot to be taken from those games. So that is the review. Thank you guys for joining me. If you noticed, as I always mention this as I go through these replays, if you notice something that specifically that you might have done differently, or something really obvious I missed, just let me know in the comments. If I want to make this kind of an active discussion type thing. And I know there's some really good players that watch my videos, players that are much better than me. So if you see something, let me know. And also, if you're out here, you're watching this, and you are better than me, which I know there's many of you out there. I would love to see this type of content from some of the best in the world. I know Ivan Rizito makes some of these. I know AJT BLS has in the past, and others. It would be really cool to see some more videos like this from really high level players. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. Thank you guys for joining me, and until the next one, bye.